he could certainly go on and have an all-star caliber career, and I wouldn't be shocked at all by that. But he also wouldn't be the first player that didn't have that all-star caliber career with the team that drafted him either.
I don't think the game's over.
Welcome into Triple Zeros, the anti-hot take sports show. I am your host, Josh Buckhalter. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports website, clockersports.com, and email address is clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at 30spod. That's the number 30spod. That voice you heard was GM of the Atlanta Hawks, Travis Schlenk, discussing what the fallout, I guess, or the details of the Cam Reddish trade sent to the New York Knicks this week for a draft pick and another player. We'll discuss that in a second, but because today is Saturday, we got a lot to get to and a little bit of time to do it, so let's get right to it, shall we? It is Super Wildcard Weekend in the NFL, and we have a slate of great matchups. Now, last week we already talked about, our confidence levels in the teams that are going in. So we don't really have to go too deep into how I feel about each and every one of the teams. But I do think that it's important to go ahead and rehash who I'm picking for each and every matchup and just, where I think things stand. Now, the first matchup that we have on Saturday is going to be the Bengals taking on the Raiders. And I'm a big fan in what the Raiders did last week. I talked about Rich Bisaccia should really get a chance to earn that head coaching spot out there in Las Vegas with the Raiders. I think the job that he did taking over for John Gruden amid that situation and really everything that they had going on is just bang up. And I don't know if there's much more that the Raiders could have asked for any coach, let alone a coach coming into those circumstances. So I think that he should get a chance. I don't think he'll get the chance, and that's a bit of a shame. But it's a great story. And Derek Carr is a guy that you root for, too. Even if you're not necessarily a fan of the Raiders, I think that he does things and he's gone about things in his career the right way. So it's kind of hard to not be a fan of guys like that, of players like that. And so to me, it just seems like, this is the way that it's going to be. And I'm for it. Let me just put it that way. I'm really for giving him a shot and letting him finish what he started, what he's taken over again and gotten to right the ship on, right? And I think it kind of speaks to a larger point that we talk about in the NFL where special teams coaches don't really get the recognition that they deserve. One of the best in the game right now, John Harbaugh of the Baltimore Ravens, started off as a special teams coach. And you hear rave reviews about guys like former Bears special teams coordinator. I think he's with the Chiefs now, Dave Tobe, and how he's kind of gotten passed over. And there's another one, Chris Tabor, Bears current special teams guy. And the same thing with him is that you just wonder if he's going to ever get his shot to truly to earn his keep as a head coach. I'm not sure, but I definitely wouldn't be against any of these guys actually getting their shot to do so, because I just think that it's a good point to point out that they are interacting with every guy on the team, especially if they're a team that does a lot of drafting and developing. Those guys are coming through there, almost to a man. And even when you get to be veterans, a lot of veterans now are playing on special teams because they want to be able to make an impact in multiple phases. So just wanted to give that little shout out to Rich Bisaccia one more time because, again, I don't see them all the talk about the Raiders' job has been that they need a face, right? You have to get a big name to kind of come down there, a marquee, a billboard. And so that's why I just kind of feel like they're not going to really give him the shot that he deserves at it, despite the fact that, again, they had John Gruden, Henry Ruggs, all types of stuff. They've cut first round picks because of Damon Arnett, right? Like Darren Waller's injury. Like, it's been rough. It hasn't gone well, or smoothly rather, for the Raiders, and it's gone well overall. On the other side, the Bengals. Joe Burrow. I've been a Joe Burrow fan since LSU. I'm not gonna act like I was on him before that, but definitely became a fan of his at LSU in that magical season that he had. And just to see him going and doing what he's doing this year with the Bengals and those weapons that they have out there. First of all, I don't want to sit here and act like he's doing it by himself. So let me go ahead and say that. The Bengals have a really, really, really talented team that's been put together over the past few years. So nobody should be surprised by how they're doing it now. The fact that they've come together so well, so fast, despite still having questions along their offensive line and still having some issues on defense, if you ask me, I think it's impressive. And it shows the importance of having a star quarterback under center and what they can do for your franchise. This was a team, they were just talking about firing Zach Taylor, right? Even when Joe Burrow got hurt, oh man, how did they pick Joe Burrow and not protect? They got to fire this guy. Look at him now. They're in the playoffs. And so just incredible stuff to see from a Bengals team that, again, came into the year with some expectations, but I don't think anybody foresaw them going about it this way and being as good as they've been. So shout out to them, Joe Burrow, 4,600 yards this season. Again, it's been pretty impressive overall, and I don't know that you can put it all on him because, again, they've also got, you got running backs, they've got a complete offense. 3 weapons in T. Higgins. Jamar Chase is a stud as a rookie. Of course, Joe Burrow obviously knew that. That's why I was stopping for him. When your quarterback is coming out and publicly saying that they want the guy, you probably should go about doing it. That's what the Dolphins tried to do with Tua and Jalen Waddle, which is probably why people aren't talking about the Jalen Waddle impact of the entire thing on Brian Flores. We know he can't play well with others. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm getting sidetracked. Anyway, Bengals Raiders. The Raiders are a great story, a scrappy team. I probably trust their defense a little bit more than I trust the Bengals defense, but the Bengals offense is that much more explosive than the Raiders. Grinded out, still very solid offense. I'm gonna ride with the Bengals in this one, and I'm open to be disappointed by my pick. That's fine, but I'm gonna go with the whole team in the Bengals, and then live with that. Later on today, you have the Patriots taking on the Bills for the 3rd time this season, and I'm going to go ahead and say that the Bills are going to go ahead and dispatch of New England. It's been a good story. Mac Jones, as a rookie, showed out, got them to the playoffs, played well, but we've seen over the past few weeks that when he's forced to throw, when the game's put on his arm and his shoulders, he's not there yet. And I'm just going to say yet. I'm not even going to say he's not going to be there. And this was my point along the lines this entire season. It wasn't that Mac Jones wasn't good and wasn't doing well for a rookie, for any player. It was that when it came down to it, you could just tell by how they were operating that it was going to be problematic for them to overcome some of the better teams in the NFL. And that's just how it is. They're at an early stage. This was not only bringing in a rookie quarterback, but you brought in a bunch of pieces on offense. You brought back a bunch of guys on defense after being hurt. Got rid of what was considered to be your best defensive player in Stephon Gilmore. Like, there's a lot going on here. You got the revitalization of Matthew Judon. There's a lot going on in New England, so to be proud of. So, not saying they're going to be bad. This is bad on them, but I don't expect them to be able to hang with Buffalo today, unless the wind is going crazy again and Josh Allen can't throw. So there's that. Philadelphia taking on the Buccaneers. Sorry, Philly. Sacrificial lamb status. The Bucks. It's the Bucks, and I'll say this: they're probably more vulnerable now than they've ever been. But that would make me worried of Tom Brady more now than I've ever been, because we know how he steps up when the moment calls for it. People talk about how he doesn't do well and he hasn't played well in the Super Bowl except for when they needed it, right? So in this one, Philly's a good story, just like the Raiders are. Nick Sirianni and his coaching staff have really revamped and turned around 180 how they operate that offense, and it's great. It's gotten them to this point. See you. See you next year when you improve a little bit, get some more weapons on offense, improve that defense. Because teams are going to be looking for that next year. But it's a good story now. I still think they're going to be fodder for the Bucs. Right now we're on 3 home teams, and I'm going to tell you before we even get to it, the fourth game, I'm going to see it being the same way. But I do want to talk about something before I get to that, because there's a little bit of spice here. There was a great piece from Peter Schrager about the history of the Cowboys and the 49ers. And then to go into the game, you always appreciate a little bit of smack talk, right? You always like to hear some of the player chatter when they're going to a rival, storied history, friend, whatever, the stories, the Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, Troy Aikman, oh my goodness, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith. You know about these stories about these teams and what they've done over the years. Charles Haley. You know about these stories and these figures, these personalities. It's not going away anytime soon. And I'm happy to see that, because you got this today, or in this week rather, from 49ers edge rusher Nick Bosa talking about his opponents on Sunday, the Dallas Cowboys.
They're both very solid players. Obviously, Tyron's had a Hall of Fame career, I think. And him and Trent have been the best tackles in the league for a long time. But they're definitely beatable. There's tape on them getting beat, and we're trying to do the same. But they've definitely been in and out of the lineup a lot this year and the past years. So just game plan is to make them work.
And there you had 49ers edge rusher Nick Bosa, courtesy of KNBR Sports you saw there, talking about Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins on the Cowboys offensive line. And I'm going to be honest with you, he didn't lie. They're good, talented. Tyron Smith's going to the Hall of Fame. But he's been hurt an awful lot in the past few years. And Lyle Collins just came back not that long ago, if I'm not mistaken, as well as the fact that, like he said, they're beatable. The Cowboys have had quite a few moments where, be it through play calling or execution, things just haven't clicked all the way. And with Dak back there, you're not worried about the calf, but you're worried about the calf still. You're always worried about him in the back of his mind if that's ever going to creep up if he gets hit a couple of times. And like I said, as he said, they're beatable, and he's good. He's a very talented young player. So you could see, my favorite part about that, though, the reason why I brought it up and why I showed it is because you could see he was waiting to give you that but the entire time. He was waiting to give you that except for the pause. He was holding on to say, because pause, that was weird. He was waiting to say, hold on, the entire time. He was like, yeah, he had the smirk on his face like, yeah, they're good, Hall of Fame. But that's the best part. You could just see him waiting to give it to you and tell you, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna handle my business and I'm gonna take care of these guys because Now, like I said though, that being said, I still think the Dallas is gonna win. But this is probably the one that I'm the least confident in because Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy who has found a way to step up when the 49ers need him the most. And we could talk about how he's probably not there long for that team with Trey Lance in the wings, whatever the case may be, however you may feel about it. The fact of the matter is he's gotten them to the playoffs more often than he hasn't. And, how do you just eschew that experience? Is it going to be a 49ers Kansas City Chiefs situation with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes? I don't know. I haven't heard that from anybody talking about Trey Lance. But as a person who has been down on Jimmy G in the past, who has really felt like, the Niners would be best served to just move him out and start fresh with Trey Lance already, been impressed. I've been rather impressed with what Garoppolo's been able to do under duress and in these situations that, again, aren't necessarily conducive to what his skill set is. So props to him for that one. That's my picks for this weekend, though, or for Saturday and Sunday. And then on Monday, we also have I'm forgetting one. I'm sorry. I'm forgetting two games here. Wow. Look at this, trying to hurry through the slate. The Steelers and the Chiefs. Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin, my boy. My favorite coach in the NFL, taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs have figured it out on offense. They figured out a way to keep things going when it's not giving them the home runs, and I think that was the missing piece, and that makes them probably the most dangerous team in the playoffs right now. Maybe not the best. I think that distinction belongs to a team over in the NFC, which we won't talk about this week because they're not playing, so I'm not even going to address them because I don't want to, and if that doesn't let you know who it is, then I don't know what to tell you. But the Chiefs are going to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers team that's probably going to be trying to play for a little bit more than just a wild card win when, as it has been made known that Ben Roethlisberger is probably going to be retiring after this year. There are guys that are still big fans of him on the team, and so I can see them giving a little extra effort. I don't know if it's going to make a big difference, but I will say if anybody can go into Kansas City and not be fazed by the environment, it's going to be Pittsburgh. And so I'm not saying that I'm not confident in the Chiefs, but this, like the Cowboys game, if they were to win this one, I would not be surprised at all, the Steelers. And then lastly, you have the Cardinals taking on the Rams at home. Rams are at home, rather, on Monday night. First game on MLK. The Cardinals will be wearing MLK decals. I believe the Rams are too, but I know for a fact the Cardinals are going to be wearing Martin Luther King Jr. decals on their helmets. I want to say the Rams because they're the home team, but the Rams have let me down multiple times in big spots. And even though I feel like they figured it out and they figured out how to play the Cardinals, Kyler Murray is a guy that I think takes us to another level. We'll see what the Rams defense can do. They've got pieces. The Rams are the more talented team, but I'm still feeling like the Cardinals can pull something off here. Now, I know DeAndre Hopkins won't be available to them, but at the same time, I can't help but feel like there's going to be some kind of flukiness, Matthew Stafford throwing picks, something that happens that just keeps the Cardinals around and within striking distance, and then Kyler Murray is able to make a play late in that game. That's just my gut feeling. Have no other inclination on that or any reason to think that it'll be that way, but that is how I feel about that game. Just because, like I said, the Rams have let me down quite a few times in moments where they really shouldn't have, and I'm just not going to stand around while they continue to do so. That's how I feel about that. Now, moving around the rest of the league, I'm not going to show the video because there's nothing to show you. That's how bad it is. But Antonio Brown, since being cut by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, has been seen at, I believe, a Brooklyn Nets game courtside. And then most recently, he was seen sitting with Kanye and his new girlfriend. Floyd Mayweather was there. Madonna was there with somebody. But the overall, I tweeted it out, so follow me on Twitter at Joshua Buck and see this picture. It's the most boring picture to have so many personalities in it. And I'm talking about not just money, right? Not just rich people, personalities. These are big personalities in Brown and Floyd and Kanye and Madonna. And all I could think to myself was, do they meet up to talk about how crazy they're going to be? Because damn if that's not the craziest group of people I've ever seen collected in one room randomly. And again, when you juxtapose that with how sedated the entire room was, how just oh man, it was just dead. It was a dead vibe. Crazy image just because of how just abnormal. It just seemed weird to have all those personalities in there and still have it be so dry. So, most intriguing head coaches' jobs and jobs right now in the NFL. And I think one of the things that we were looking at that made me think of this was the Houston Texans and their interest in Brian Flores. And not that Brian Flores isn't a good coach, but there are reports that he hasn't played well with others. He's ran through coordinators and quarterback coaches. He wanted to have more power than his GM, and that's not the way the Miami Dolphins structure their power. And now for the Texans to be interested is just striking me as interesting because we know Nick Cassero comes from that organization and how he's had, I think his name is Jack Swarbrick, had that guy influencing their decisions and whatnot. David Culley came from the Ravens, right? But you had Cornell down there, continuing to go to the New England well is not paying off. And I just wonder, when you start to realize that maybe I should go in a different direction. And that's going to lead me to my final topic here, but I do want to talk about this for a little bit more, the most intriguing head coaches and jobs, because Flores is one that is intriguing because by all accounts, players were shocked that he was gone. But the media doesn't seem to care in terms of, they just don't, it wasn't an easy person to work with. And obviously, like I said, he wasn't getting along with his front office. So it's hard for me to say that he's going to be great when he can't fulfill a big portion of the job, which is getting along well with others. And I'm not saying that you got to be buddy-buddy, but this is going beyond that. And there's a recent report that said that he came out and told Tua that he should have drafted Mac Jones. We know that he was high on Justin Herbert. And it's like, well, damn, because I don't necessarily disagree, but I'm not sure that that's the best environment for that to be expressed in that fashion or even at all. So Flores is intriguing to me because it sounds like players don't hate him, but I don't know if they love him. The results weren't always there. There's some questions about the methodology, and then you can't get along with your bosses. The NFL doesn't seem like the place for you, boss. Doesn't seem like that's where that's going to be conducive to your personality type. I don't know. But to get to that role, you have to be somewhat of a politician. You have to be somewhat of a mediator, a teacher. And not everybody's cut out for that. So Flores is one. And then I think another one that's interesting to me is Doug Peterson, because Peterson's been viewed widely as a bad coach who got lucky, lightning in the bottle with the Super Bowl season in 2017. But when you look at it and look at what happened with Carson Wentz and how wishy-washy the Colts have been on committing to him, Frank Reich included, I think that speaks volumes to what happened in the fallout there with the Eagles and how they've handled things. And again, they had to organizationally flip how they were running the football team, or how they had to schematically change how they were doing things on the football field. The Eagles did. So that to me adds a little intrigue around Doug Peterson, because we thought we knew that he just didn't work. We thought he was another Flores type. Didn't work well with others, right? Shortchanged Carson Wentz. Well, look at how Wentz wet the bed and cost the Colts a playoff spot with Jonathan Taylor at home, which, by the way, that's totally the Colts' fault for even putting the game on Wentz's arm and shoulders, but that's neither here nor there because, again, they're at home, so we're not going to dwell on those guys. Just saying, add some intrigue to the Doug Peterson round of interviews. And then for jobs, Houston is interested because of Deshaun Watson. Is he staying? Is he going? Because that's part of their idea behind targeting Flores is reported that they want to keep Watson around. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But, I think it is something to keep an eye on when you notice that, there hasn't been much movement. There are reports of other open interest, places interested, Miami being one of them. But there's also the fact that he still possibly returns there, and that team goes back on to going to doing business as if it was 2020 and 2021, or 2019 and 2020, when Watson was playing and things were seemingly fine. They were a little shorthanded, but it's weird. It's weird how far this has come. But reports are that he does still want to be traded, so we'll see what ultimately happens. So I don't know if the Flores would even make a difference there. And again, the big point here is you're still going back to that well, right? So that job is intriguing, but the way they handle it and the way that they did David Culley, firing him after one season despite him being so giving him such a short deck, I think will make that a bit tough. The other one is the Bears. And it's also, there's the Broncos too, but I think the Broncos is one that probably is a little bit more because you do have a stronger offensive weapon core, and you have some pieces on defense that I think have a brighter future. And the offensive line is probably in better shape too. So the Broncos probably come in second. But the Bears are up there. And I do want to talk about the fallout. There were a great piece from The Athletic, Kevin Fishbain, Adam Johns, and oh my goodness, 3 writers from The Athletic, and they did a really good job this week going into the dysfunction of the Bears and why they are in this position. And I've talked about this before, and I was going to write it. They beat me to it, whatever the case may be. That's how it goes down. They detail how there's never a syncing of the general manager, head coach, and quarterback. There's always somebody picking up somebody's leftovers and trying to dust it off and make it work for a year before moving on to their next project, their project, which ultimately fails, and then the cycle repeats itself. There's 2 things at play here. There is the inability of any of them to figure out anything over the course. Like you would think, even the garbage can get the stick. They haven't gotten lucky, but a few times even that luck has been shortchanged by their own doing. But on top of that is their unwillingness to cut ties completely with failure. This goes back to the whole relationships thing and George McCaskey and the family liking relationships, valuing relationships over business decisions, because this is a family business. So they view it as something that needs to be sustained, and relationships need to be sustained. They don't necessarily see, or they haven't shown that they see the performance side the same way that everybody else does. But that leads me to my bigger point here. All the fallout and that wonderfully written and very accurate and really kind of disturbing piece when you look at how all things go, including Matt Nagy's handling of Mitch Trubisky, who he didn't like. Told you guys that from the beginning. He said that he didn't like him. They kind of buried that story really, really well, because I remember that when it was happening during the draft process, and then I remember it being briefly mentioned when Matt Nagy first got hired or was being interviewed. I forget which one, and then it was just gone, and they never talked about it again. But I remembered him saying it. Well, come to find out it was true. He stood him up, all this kind of stuff. He berated him, all this kind of stuff. Mitch was even calling out Matt Nagy's offensive play calling and scheme, which should tell you something right there, because people who would still say that he wasn't good enough are telling you that he was identifying that Nagy was not good. Jay Cutler's talking about, he was on the radio this week talking about how he knew within the first couple of weeks that the Bears weren't good. I say all of that to say this. With all of the talk about their process this time around with Bill Polian and McCaskey's horrible presser where he berated fans to start, got into it with Olin Kreutz without knowing the full story, and just really seemed like he was out of touch with what was going on in the situation. For all of that, name me one bad candidate on their list of interviews. That's my challenge to anyone. Name me one bad candidate. You may not want the candidate. Name me one bad candidate on their list of interviews. You can't. See, the big talk was about Polian hiring his cronies and yes men and guys that he can have control over. But looking at the list of players, recommendations and people that they've interviewed, many of them were on pre-seed or were on lists for jobs before this from other outlets as top prospects for these positions. Many of them are well-respected and guys that you would have picked if you were looking at a name on the list before knowing that they were connected to Polian. In other words, if this is who Polian's cronies are, then bring them on. Again, when he was first brought in, the big story was that, oh man, they've gotten somebody who's got acknowledged. He's hired smart people, right? He's done what he's built teams before. He's got a proven track record. And then the noise filtered in. You had Mike Florio berating George McCaskey, who's acknowledged that he's not a football guy. Bringing in somebody who many will acknowledge is a football guy to make a football choice. And it's not even that he's hiring, but he's guiding. It's semantics are at play here. But there's so much being made of a dude who told you that I'm going to let this guy do what he's supposed to be good at and get the hell out of the way. Because I'm not good at it. But because he can't speak well, it all came out clunky. Ted Phillips trying to reinsert himself in the process. And I said this at the time, I really believe that what it means is George is going to make the final decision, yes or no. But I think he's going to go high level the recommendation of Bill Polian, as well as Soup Campbell and Tanisha. I forget her last name. I want to say Watkins. I apologize. As well as their recommendation, who have a pulse on the team, especially Soup Campbell, who's widely respected in the organization and the locker room. And then Phillips' role is going to be to sign the check. Like, I think that because they can't speak, we've forgotten how to interpret things, or we're choosing not to interpret them because of who it is. But there's not a bad name on the list. My man said he's going to let a football guy come in. And in terms of the operation and stuff, as been pointed out recently, and I talked about this, the way the Bears structure things, the GM is essentially the president of the football operations. And the head coach is essentially the general manager when they get that respect and that trust factor. That's what we were told with Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace last season. So the hand-wring over the process is kind of funny to me because I get it. It's the Bears, and they're probably bound to screw it up. But you still kind of got to let them screw it up because there's not a bad name on the list. Again, even if you don't like Doug Peterson, Super Bowl ring, made it work with Carson Wentz for as long as he did. One with Nick Foles, who we all think is trash now. Like, come on. Who hasn't done much of anything anywhere else. There's not a bad name on that list. You could be mad with the process. You could be mad who's running the process. But if the results are good, and even if it's by luck, so what? And they haven't been good at creating their own luck, and a large part of that's because they haven't been having the right people around. Well, it sounds like they have the right people around, who's getting the more right people around, which, should be getting more of the same. Just pump the brakes on, and that's what I'm writing for Last Word on Pro Football. Be sure to check that. That'll be out probably on Sunday morning, as the Bears are at home. First Sunday without football, coming even in the next week. So just relax. Not to borrow a phrase from that guy up north, but calm down with the upset and tell, I reserve the right to be upset later on, but I think that we're doing too much right now about something that honestly I don't have too many issues with how they're going about it. After that presser is a microcosm of them, but everything before that with the firings and everything after that if the interviews and who they're talking to is fine. And it's people who are worried about them hiring a coach first. What's the point? The GM could have his own list of head coaches. Why not have a database of your own to supply him with to supplement whatever they have, the GM? I just think that we're not being we're not looking into this the right way, period. That's how I feel about it. Switching gears. There's a funny clip going out. Again, follow me on Twitter at Josh Buck. I retweeted with Matisse Thybulle and Josh Richardson. With Josh Richardson telling Matisse Thybulle, you're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy. And I wanted to run it on the show, but it's not really good for audio only. It's only good for the video, which is really a reason for me to plug the YouTube channel. You should follow the YouTube channel, 000. Also follow Clocker Sports. The whole playlist of guys are on there as well. But back to it. Really funny. That clip. You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy. Matisse Thybulle went up. Richardson grabbed him. He fouled him. And I think he was holding on to him so that he didn't fall. But he held on to him, I guess, a little bit too long. Matisse Thybulle did not take lightly to that. Swatted the hand away. Richardson hit him with a "you're not that guy, pal." Anytime you get one of those kind of moments, you always got to talk about it, so I did. And that's what it is. But I got to talk about my teams before we get up out of here, because we're getting close to the NBA trade deadline, and the Bulls and the Hawks are giving me palpitations. The Bulls have struggled the past 2 games against the top 2 teams in the NBA, 2 of the top 3 teams in the NBA, 2 of the top 4, however you want to phrase, some top competition. They are shorthanded. But their effort has gone way faster than I think it should have in either one of the contests. not saying they should win the games, but be more competitive. They get slight pass for Friday night against the Nets because Zach LaVine left about 3 minutes into the game. And that's what brings me to this point. His knee scare. Now, all reports are that it's not ACL. He had been playing through soreness already, and that he came down funny, felt discomfort, took himself out, and they have an MRI. We're waiting for the results of that. But the Bulls need someone else, and I think that's what we saw more than anything with him when he goes out or when they're shorthanded. And it's not that they need another scoring option, but their weaknesses are magnified when they're not whole. And they haven't been whole for some time. They've lost Alex Caruso to a foot sprain and now health and safety protocols. You've lost Patrick Williams, Javonte Green, Derrick Jones Jr., all the injuries at power forward. And guys, they've had the entire roster going in the health and safety protocols at some point throughout the season. They need to make a move. And I know that they've done well without it, but as we see, and as things tighten up here, it's going to get tougher. And in the postseason, when teams are specifically going to target your mismatch, pick and roll with Vooch, perimeter defense, right? You need to have somebody that can make up for at least one of those things. And that's probably going to easiest be helping Vooch out with defense and pick and roll. Get you a switchy big who can fill in at the 5 when need be. And I'll have some thoughts on that for Pivot Ain't Easy this week sometime or sometime early next week. But that knee scare should tell you, we'll see how they play when they play in Boston. They play Boston on Saturday. But LaVine's not supposed to make this little brief road trip. Bulls are holding on slightly to the first spot in the East. But you're going to need some more pieces to shore up a weakness so that when a strength takes a hit, you're not getting exploited, right? That's what Zach's knee scare did for me. It didn't scare me about his knee because I heard good news immediately afterward, but even still, they're scoring there. They're still scoring on the Bulls. They got Vooch and they got DeRozan. They should be able to carry you, as long as it's not significant, through however long Zach is out offensively. Defensively is a problem because you're not getting the offset of buckets. I'm not saying Zach's a great defender. He's been better. He's not a great defender. But you're not getting that offset of buckets. You're not giving it as good as you're getting it. You're taking too many shots. You're allowing too many points on the other side now and not putting up enough. There's not that imbalance on the other defense because of how Zach plays compared to how Vooch and DeMar play. Kobe plays a little herky-jerky too. He's got that kind of start-stop, but it's not the same. It's not explosive like Zach. It's more smooth. So that would be my concern there, and I think that's what the Bulls ultimately are going to have to do is make a move, man, because you sit pat and you get left. That's how it goes. And now before I get to the other team, the Hawks, let's go to this other clip here. They cracked the seal on the trade season in the NBA with a deal that sent Cam Reddish to the New York Knicks for a highly protected draft pick from the Charlotte Hornets in the first round. And, throw-in wing, I guess you would call him, Kevin Knox, who's shown some potential in the past but has not been in rotation for quite some time now, and I'm not sure how he helps them, but we'll see. This, though, is Hawks general manager Travis Schlenk talking about Cam Reddish trade and how everything went down.
Anytime you're talking about a 22-year-old player that has played less than 150 games in the league, I think he's super high talent. We all see that. He's got great length, he's got great size, he's got great skill level. But we're trying to blend the team together as well. So we have to take all that stuff into consideration. And listen, he could certainly go on and have an all-star caliber career, and I wouldn't be shocked at all by that. But he also wouldn't be the first player that didn't have that all-star caliber career with the team that drafted him either. Sometimes for whatever the situation, things don't click. I completely understand where New York's coming from. If I was New York and I had 3 first-round draft picks the way they did, and you look at Cam Reddish's potential, I get that. I wish nothing but the best for Cam. I don't have any ill will towards him at all. We try to make the best decisions we can, and we move forward.
Now, this has reportedly been in the works for months. Cam came to them in the offseason looking for a trade, felt like he wasn't going to be able to develop and wanted a bigger role. And I'm going to say this. I understand the addition by subtraction method. They had better effort out of the gates last night, on Friday night against the Miami Heat in the second of their second game in 3 days against that team. They play again here on Saturday as they take on, as I pull it up here. But their effort waned, and I think that was the bigger problem. In the fourth quarter, they just didn't have it, and they had all of their familiar issues came back up in the fourth quarter. And that was the biggest concern for me, is that they didn't just lose, but you had a lead, you gave up easy shots, you had turnovers, you had poor shot selection, it was bad, and it all came rushing back with them taking on the Knicks on Saturday. Reddish will not play in that game, so there won't be direct bragging rights, but you're going to want to try to get this W, because pride alone should make you want to get this win. You shouldn't want to lose to the team that's already ahead of you in the standings. They've gotten hot while you started to stumble, right? You beat them. You knocked them out to the postseason last year. You know that they've taken pride. They've beaten you twice this year. They take pride in coming and shutting you down. You lost Solomon Hill, who's now a Knick, right? That's weird, because that was your enforcer. Who's going to fill in that role? There's a lot of questions about this trade that I hope it's not the only one. I understand why they did it, but at the same time, when you look at the product on the floor, you have to wonder if there wasn't some validity to Reddish's being upset. Maybe, and I'm not saying that he played well with the other guys, because there's ample data that shows that him and Trae Young don't play well, because Reddish wants to have more control of the offense. Now, is that he doesn't play well with Trae Young, or Trae Young doesn't play well with others conversation? That's for something for another day, because Reddish is no longer here. And my mid-season progress report for the Hawks that'll be out sometime Saturday as well for Soaring Down South. I cover that. But I just think that there's going to be more. There has to be more, because that alone is not going to solve your issues. Like I said, they crept up again in the fourth quarter last night. If you don't fix them, either by move or by schematic change, something's got to give, because you're going to be right back where you were prior to last season, and I don't think anybody wants to see that. That's the problem. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com. Email address is clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, you can follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at 30spod. That's the number 30spod. Follow me, read the stuff on Last Word on Pro Football, Pippin' It Easy, and SoaringDownSouth.com. And until the very next time, I think you already know what it is, man.
They're both very solid players, but they're definitely beat.